This coming week, Earth Day will once more be celebrated as it has for the past 51 years since it began, but it will be celebrated in a newer way. Last year in April 2020, it marked its 50th anniversary, which on any other year would have occasioned a major global commemoration. But by then, the pandemic had shut down most of the United States and considerable portions of the rest of the world. So there were not massive rallies or public demonstrations. Last year, Earth Day went digital. This year, it will remain digital. And this year, I encourage all of you to tune in and participate in the days of online activities leading up to April 22nd. Earth Day is the single largest secular celebration on this planet, and with good reason. Earth is home to all of us, the only habitation we know. There was some cause for celebration last year. As for the first spring since its inception, Earth Day witnessed a decrease in emissions worldwide. Noise, air, water, and light pollution had decreased across all continents. Some species were revived as their natural habitats were less stressed by human activity. Certain ecosystems began to flourish anew. During such a difficult time, the news was not entirely bad. In fact, it gave a lot of people cause for hope. According to earthday.org, the website of the official sponsors of Earth Day, more than 1 billion people treat Earth Day as a day of action to change human behavior and create global, national, and local policy changes. And its impact always extends well beyond April. As the awareness of our climate crisis grows, so does civil society mobilization, which is reaching a fever pitch across the globe today, the site explained. The annual theme for Earth Day 2021 is Restore Our Earth. The site insisted, as the world returns to normal, we cannot go back to business as usual. Because business as usual is bad for the planet and for too many of its inhabitants as well. That same point was made by the speaker invited to the 2020 General Assembly of our Unitarian Universalist Association to give the first ever virtual WEAR lecture. Journalist, academic, filmmaker, activist, and author Naomi Klein told those in her remote audience, maybe we should carry this through to our post-COVID lives. Save our in-person gatherings for local and regional events so we don't have to fly and keep having our national and international gatherings virtually. That feels not just possible, but sensible, she concluded. Some of you may remember her remarks. Perhaps you were one of the delegates representing UU Wellesley Hills at that online GA, or perhaps you joined our UU learning community for its watch party of the 2020 WEAR lecture last June. In her address, Klein acknowledged just how frightening the pandemic was. But she also pointed to the ways that she found responses to it inspiring. What it showed her was how adaptable humans could be, how quickly they could reorganize their lives and society when faced with a large-scale emergency. Citing the 7th principle in our UUA principles and purposes, the one affirming our respect for the interdependent web of existence, of which we are all a part, Klein applauded its wisdom. She declared, we must pause again to truly take in the reality that we are living at a time when the seemingly impossible has become possible. These seismic shifts to public policy and private lives, flawed and lopsided though they may be, have unfolded in the blink of an eye, she noted. The idea that we humans cannot do what is required to confront the many overlapping and intersecting crises plaguing our world because it's too much was always a lie, she contended. The foundational truth here is that change, widespread, systemic, holistic change, is in all our best interest now. Take courage, the young water protector tells us in our Time for All Ages this morning. How can we not? Klein's latest book is On Fire, the burning case for a Green New Deal. In it, she writes, it just so happens that we are all alive at the very last possible moment when changing course can mean saving lives on a truly unimaginable scale. It also just happens that a global pandemic has put all of our lives on pause and confronted us with some stark realities that required our focused, collective attention. In April 2019, Klein released an animated short that she produced titled A Message from the Future. It went viral and then was nominated for an Emmy Award. You might have seen it after its initial release. Narrated by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it envisioned the improved state of this country after it adopted a Green New Deal. Another writer called Klein the intellectual godmother of the Green New Deal, and that seems apt. Yet Klein wants all of us to understand that implementing the Green New Deal is not a fairy tale. It is instead a distinct possibility, and beyond that, a dire necessity. So much hangs in the balance of what we do, the people who happen to be alive at this very moment do or fail to do right now in these immediate days, weeks, months, and a handful of years, Klein told the UU audience at her Where lecture. She added that an April 2020 poll reported that 72% of Americans supported a Green New Deal. What the past few months have proven beyond all doubt is that when societies decide to treat an emergency as an emergency, precisely what climate activists have been calling for, all manner of possibilities instantly bloom, she noted. All sorts of things can be restored, including the earth itself. Designed beyond all spiderly contrivance to link, not to entrap. All praise to the great web, wrote the poet Denise Levertov. Since it started in 1970, Earth Day has intended to link us in common concern for the world we share. It was not meant to be a day apart, a rote annual observance, but rather a rallying cry that year after year called us back to our senses. That reminded us of what was exactly at stake with environmental degradation. We all depend on a great web for our existence. We cannot deny our interconnectedness. Originally, Earth Day was a bipartisan initiative between a junior Democratic senator from a Midwestern state and a Republican congressman from a Southern state. They worked together with a youth activist to get college students involved over spring break and succeeded. The rest, as they say, is history. Truly, it was history making. Soon, the Earth Day organization was created and staffed. In 1970, approximately 20 million Americans, about a tenth of the population at that time, took to the streets to protest pollution. By the end of that year, the United States Environmental Protection Agency was established. By 1990, Earth Day was mobilizing 200 million people in countries worldwide, raising consciousness about the need for recycling and renewable energy sources. This year, more than 1 billion people will mark Earth Day around the globe, and I hope you will be counted in that sizable number. There will be 3 days of climate action starting on Tuesday, April 20th, and concluding on Thursday, April 22nd. These feature a youth summit, a teach-in, panels, workshops, speeches, and of course, an Earth Day, a proper Earth Day celebration. The issues to be included in the upcoming Restore Our Earth Day observance include emerging green technologies, environmental literacy, climate restoration, citizen science, volunteer cleanups, reforestation efforts, and sustainable agricultural practices. The human costs of climate change and global warming will be highlighted, and questions of equity and justice will be raised by influential activists, innovators, and industry leaders as we move toward a better world and a brighter future. I encourage you to do your part by thinking of a handful of actions you can commit to taking between this Earth Day and the next. Just a handful. Maybe it will involve a big investment, installing some solar panels, for instance. Maybe it will involve making a conscious choice to stop eating red meat, for example, or to keep a meatless Monday, or possibly to adopt a vegetarian or even vegan diet. I want to suggest that you make 5 commitments at minimum in honor of the 5 decades of Earth Days. Be mindful of your ability to take actions at several different levels simultaneously, the individual level, as well as the level of your household, locality, and state, to affect change beyond that nationally and internationally. We can hold public and private sectors alike accountable for their practices. As consumers, we can always make value-based purchases. No doubt you have heard that popular environmental slogan, think globally, act locally. These days, though, we have surprising impacts at distant removes, and we should not forget that. Don't underestimate your power. When your voice and your actions are united with thousands or millions or billions of others around the world, earthday.org declares, we create a movement that is inclusive, impactful, and impossible to ignore. Every Earth Day can drive a year of energy, enthusiasm, and commitment to create a new plan of action for our planet. It is especially true this year. So why not create an action plan of your own? Share it with your friends and families, neighbors, and fellow congregants here at UU Wellesley Hills. Remind them, remind us of the power we all have to affect global change. Underscore the urgency of acting now. In her 2020 WARE lecture, Klein cautioned that we are getting very close to midnight now. There is a clear consensus that time is of the essence. We don't have any years to spare in confronting the obvious ravages of climate change. Many of you were conscious of the environmental protections that the last presidential administration dismantled. Its negligence was devastating. The good news is that we have a new administration now that within its first 100 days made significant changes for the better. President Biden's environmentally aware transition team had ambitious designs from the beginning. The United States has already rejoined the Paris Agreement, canceled the Keystone Pipeline project, and stopped its drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. It also dropped all appeals to environmental lawsuits brought by the previous administration. The newly proposed US infrastructure plan includes such significant energy expenditures as $174 billion for electric vehicles and related expenses, and $74 billion for improvements to the electric grid, including the addition of renewable energy sources. For all intents and purposes, it is the start of a new Green Deal, of a Green New Deal, and it deserves our support. A federal carbon tax might even be in the offing in the not too distant future. The prospect of enduring change should give us all cause for celebration. We should find it inspiring. As Klein pointed out last June, we can harbor no doubt that changes are possible on a massive scale whenever there is popular resolve around those. Deadly viruses leap from animals to the humans who stole their habitats. Cities are set aflame by untenable levels of injustice and neglect, and our natural world is on fire too, she observed. She asked whether we would stop pretending there was time to spare. So much hangs in the balance of what we do, the people who happen to be alive at this moment, do or fail to do right now. We need to accelerate the pace of change or risk perishing. Klein noted that we are all living in the age of consequences. Recalling the consequences of our decisions could be positive ones that would ultimately result in more abundant life for decades, centuries, and perhaps millennia. If nothing else, the public health crisis this pandemic presents us with can motivate us to promote greater health on several different fronts: individual health, collective health, systemic health, environmental health, and yes, planetary health. In her Where lecture, Klein quoted one science fiction writer who proclaimed, "The virus is rewriting our imaginations." The virus is rewriting our imaginations. Let's hope so. Klein told her UU audience that the transformations required of us are huge. We don't have to do it all alone. We dare not attempt to do them alone. We need each other in order to succeed, as we say, in order to survive, as we often sing. While we are celebrating 50 years, more than 50 years of Earth Day this week, by most reliable estimates, we have somewhere between 10 and 20 years to correct our course and start the overdue and necessary work of restoring our Earth. So start today and celebrate on Thursday, and continue to deepen your multiple commitments to environmental restoration in the days, weeks, months, years, and yes, decades ahead. Earth is our home, the only habitation we know. What fresh care can we show it? Something wondrous could spring into life like April. Potentially, the most exciting firsts in our lives are the ones that have yet to be. We can welcome newer ways simply by imagining that they are possible. When we imagine that, they suddenly are.